Arsenal host Man United at 5:30 on Saturday, live on Sky Sports. It's always an intriguing fixture in the Premier League, and to help us look ahead to the latest edition of the rivalry, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Sky Sports pundit Jamie Redknapp. How you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, very well. Good morning, Peter. You okay?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Jamie, now we've got to start with Man United's shock defeat to Sheffield United on Wednesday night. Not many people saw that coming, but what does it tell us about Man United's title credentials?
Well, it was a shock of the season for sure, Peter, and I was obviously surprised. You have to be, because it's a team that's been in great form. I'm not quite sure how they've got to the top of the table, if I'm totally honest. And I think even the most fervent Man United fan would agree with that. They haven't really showed consistency all season, but somehow, I think because of the inadequacy of other teams, you know, Liverpool not being on form, Man City not being on the form all season, of late they've been amazing. But they've found themselves at the top. And maybe a little bit of arrogance crept in. Maybe a little bit, well, listen, we've got to just turn up and we'll win this game. And that's what it looked like to me. Too many of the players were off the pace, not sharp enough. I think obviously the Liverpool game, the weekend would have taken a bit out of them. He tried to freshen it up, brought in the new left back, brought in obviously Tuanzebe at centre back. But everything that he did just didn't work. And I don't think you can look at those two things. I think you look at the senior players to set the right examples. Pogba wasn't at it yesterday. Too many players look like going through the motions. We'll beat this side and it'll be a second half, you know, once we'll turn it around. And they weren't good enough. And it was such a frustration for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Maybe, listen, you could always say wake up call and all the things, you know, this might be what they need now. But let's be totally honest, it's not that good a Man United side that's found themselves top of the table. So right now, they've got to look at it and think, how do we make sure we get back to the form that's got us there and quickly turn it around against an Arsenal side that are, to a certain extent, resurgent. They're on a good run. And I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be thinking this is a game that we'll be looking forward to, unlike, say, 6-7 weeks ago, when anyone coming to the Emirates would have been a hard game for them.
Yeah, sure. For Man United, it felt as well like a damning result 24 hours after Man City had thrashed West Brom. You know, obviously, Man City going top of the table ahead of Man United with that result. Do you think that sort of underlines the gap in quality between those two Manchester sides at the moment?
You can't underestimate. This is a side that's got to the top of the table, so you have to compliment that. You have to believe that they've done a good job. But there's been certain aspects. I've said it before, Pete. I think the fact of Fernandes being in such good form, he has been the catalyst to everything they've done. I don't look at this Man United side and think previous years, when there was crowds in, when everything was back to normality, could this United side compete? No, but the way that things are right now, the way that the football world is, anyone can win this league from the top 6-7 sides. This is a crazy season. And I think that they've found themselves there. They've got to make sure they get back to the basics that they were doing. I think picking his best side, you have to take every single game right now with a belief that you can lose against the bottom side or the top side. So they didn't, I don't think Ole probably showed Sheffield United the respect they deserved in a way. And it certainly cost them. But I also want to just compliment Sheffield United. I thought Phil Jagielka, his performance yesterday, I think 36 years of age, something like that, was absolutely incredible. Up front, they worked their socks off. They were well organised. They deserved the win. But Manchester United can't afford to have that kind of sort of arrogance or a belief that we'll just turn up and win games. Because right now, that's not how football's working. It's an incredibly strange season. This isn't to say they can't still win the league. Of course they can, because I think anything is possible this year. But they've got to make sure they get back to basics and get a good result against an Arsenal side that are full of confidence.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that game then, Jamie, because, of course, Arsenal, that was their last defeat in the Premier League previous to Sheffield United. That was back in November, and it was quite a low moment for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side, because at the time, Arsenal were really struggling for form. But as you said there, Arsenal have turned things around themselves in recent weeks. They've won 6 out of 8 in all competitions. So what's going on there with Arteta's side? What's been behind their improvement?
I think there's a number of aspects. I think senior players have been a lot better. I was heavily critical of them when they were losing games. I think there was a game on Sky we did, and I've said there was too many kiddies in that team. I still believe that one or two of them turn it on when they want, and there's other times you look at them and yes, they fancy this game, and right now there's some senior players that are playing well. Saka is a player that I've been really critical of, but his form has been great. Will he keep it going? I'm not convinced, because you know that he's always capable of a red card or a rash challenge that's going to cost his team, especially in games when he plays against quick midfielders. I think his lack of pace really affects that that midfield area. But he's been in good form. But the main catalyst has been the young players. Emile Smith-Rowe has come in and been a revelation. I think they needed someone to just light the flame, give them that spark. I think as well, obviously Saka all season has been amazing. Last year as well, and I think sometimes when you're in a bit of a bad run. I remember at Liverpool when Graham Souness gave myself, Steve McManaman and Robbie Fowler our debuts, we had no fear. But you could see around the senior players were more nervous. They were the ones that maybe got a bit consumed by fear. And I felt that as I got older. But when you're a young player, you don't care. You just want to play. And for Emile Smith-Rowe right now, this is the dream. This is what he's wanted. He's an academy boy. I'm not sure if he's an Arsenal fan, but you can see that he's doing a great job. The fans love him. And I just hope with Odegaard coming into the club, I hope that doesn't stop him still being instrumental in what they're doing. The hardest thing will be for him, and I'm sure he knows this, where he plays is a position where you're always looking for the best in the world, or players in that position to be a number 10 or a wide man, or he's competing with some of the best. So he's going to always have to maintain these standards that he is right now. But I've been so impressed with him. I love his work ethic. I love the way he runs with the ball. He's just looked a breath of fresh air for this Arsenal team, exactly when they needed it.
Yeah, as you say, that Odegaard coming in and potentially challenging Smith-Rowe for those positions. Now, we know Odegaard, when he first went to Real Madrid in 2015, he was this wonder kid, wasn't he? All the top teams were after him. He's developed since then. He had a good year last year with Real Sociedad in La Liga. 22 now. So what do you expect to see from him when he arrives in the Premier League?
Yeah, it feels a bit of a shame, really, because I remember seeing him when he sort of burst on the scene, a la Micah Richards. And it was a case of what's going to be next for this young man. And I get it. I understand it. I mean, I did it. I went to Liverpool when I was 17, and I was pretty lucky that things worked out for me there. Now, he went to Real Madrid, and it probably felt at that time too early. It didn't feel like the right move. I think you have to gradually, start the process of becoming a Real Madrid player when you're, say, maybe 23, 24, and you're established. Yeah. And you get lost in the B team there. And this is certainly what's happened to him. Zidane is obviously not that big a fan. I think he went to Sociedad, he went to Vitesse, 2 loans that have been okay for him. But it's not, I'm amazed. He's 22. My goodness, it feels like he was 15 and playing in the first team. That's incredible. It almost feels like a bit of a wasted 6-7 years. He might not say that. He might say, well, it's been a great, experience for him. But keep going on loan everywhere. You need a home. You don't want to keep getting loaned out everywhere. But this is a chance for him to look at the Premier League. He might feel this is the best option for him with his style of play. And I think that, Mikel Arteta, sometimes young managers prefer to work with younger players. And that seems to be the case a little bit, that he's gone with the young players, that they seem to get, he gets the best out of them. And Odegaard coming in, you like to think that he'll just be a player that can give you an option if you need it. But I think Emile Smith-Rowe certainly has that shirt right now. And he's going to have to work hard, Odegaard, to get into this team, because they're a team that's in form. As I say, I'm not convinced yet, but they are playing really good football. And it's... I don't like managers. Obviously, have been under huge amounts of pressure. Frank Lampard lost his job this week. Arteta was the same, and I felt that maybe 8-9 weeks ago they might have got rid of him. Would that have been the right thing to do? Probably not, because you can keep chopping and changing managers all you like. You need to have the right players in there, and I think that sticking with him has obviously paid off because they're playing well at the moment.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that, Jane, because it felt to me like this is an interesting game at the end of that week where Frank Lampard's lost his job, where a lot of people were saying that perhaps Chelsea were quick to move and get rid of him, perhaps too soon, not give him the time. But then we see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in this match as a manager who's been given lots of time by Man United despite some indifferent results. We've got Arteta who went through that really tough patch, but Arsenal stood by him. And it just struck me as an interesting fixture at the end of this week.
Yeah, I think what's tending to happen in football now is player power is obviously prevalent, always has been. It's probably more so at Chelsea. So what will happen if things aren't going well at a club like Chelsea? There is a lot of dialogue between agents and the owners, and then if there is enough of a feeling that the manager isn't doing well enough, then the club acts. So what that does is give player power. But a club like Manchester United, I think when Ole was under huge pressure, when they lost to maybe Tottenham at the start of the year, I think there would have been probably a lot of players not happy about the situation, going to their agents. The agents then maybe go to Ed Woodward and say, listen, we're not happy here. And maybe the message comes back, well, unlucky. He's the manager. You're going to have to get on with it. And you can see the likes of Paul Pogba have played a lot better this last 8-9 weeks, probably because they're thinking, well, we're not just going to be able to force another manager out by player power. He might be here longer than I am, so I've got to start to improve. So it sets a precedent and it sets the right example that players can't just get rid of managers like that happens at some clubs, because certainly at Chelsea it felt a little bit like that maybe one or two players that aren't happy. And when you're at a football club, you can't keep everyone happy. You've got so many players, you've got to juggle the pack, you've got to make sure that everyone's getting game time if you can. You've got to look at the characters in the squad, because you know full well when things aren't going well, there'll be one or two players whispering behind your back, and that causes a real paranoia around the squad. But I think what the two clubs have done is they've shown Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Mikel Arteta that you're our manager. There's been no pressure from above, it seems, and they are now getting the results. And one's got to the top of the table, one's in a resurgence, and that's because they've not let the players run the club. You've got to let the manager be the most important figure there. Otherwise, you're going to create a situation where players can get rid of managers all the time. And that's fine when you had, at Chelsea as an example, when they had Frank Lampard, John Terry, Drogba, that when you're letting those kind of players, that they run the club and they're the ones that are getting the good results, that's absolutely amazing because it will work. But when you look at this Chelsea side now, there's not those big characters. So you can keep chopping and changing manager all the time. It doesn't always get results.
So when we look at the teams that Arteta and Solskjaer will send out on Saturday, Jamie, how do you expect these two teams to clash? How do you expect the tactics to play out? What are the key areas for us to look out for?
Well, I think first of all we talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He won't take too many risks. I think one of his players of the season, obviously Bruno's the standout, but then I would have to say Luke Shaw. I thought Luke Shaw, a year ago, he'll be a player that might get moved on, but he's been in brilliant form this year, and you could see yesterday how much they've missed him. Defensively, going forward, he's been right on his game. And I think you have to credit Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and obviously Luke Shaw for that. So he'll certainly come back in centre-back position. And I suppose he's got a choice between Lindelof and Bailey, as long as they're fit, because Tuanzebe won't play this game. In midfield, I think maybe Fred McTominay, one of those two will come in because they've had success playing that way. And then you're looking at really up front. Maybe he brings Cavani back in, because it seems that Cavani has been involved in some really big performances for them of late. So he'll be one that I'm sure that will start with Rashford on one side and maybe Martial or Greenwood, whatever way he wants to go. But they'll be looking at get his best team back out there, because you need to get 3 points as quickly as possible. You don't want this to become a situation where they lose that form and that spark that they've had of late. Because whatever you say, and I've been, I do think they took it for granted yesterday they were going to win this game. It happens. I've done it plenty of times in matches when I thought, we're going to just win this game, and you come unstuck. You can't. Every game has to be a cup final for Manchester United right now. From Arsenal's point of view, I think he'll be looking at, let's just keep going. Let's just keep doing the same things. They're in red hot form. Obviously, Aubameyang is not in the team at the moment, but it hasn't affected them. I think Lacazette and Saka up front have been brilliant in their, or Saka in the wide areas. And there's been, I think, Smith Rowe as well. So he'll be looking forward to this game. And it almost feels like the young guns will be the leading light in these matches for both teams.
Yeah, we mentioned a couple of times Saka. He scored one, he set up another in midweek, took the man of the match prize. Just 19 years old, Jamie. So how good do you think he can become? Is he a player that Gareth Southgate will be looking at for the summer?
Definitely. And I think what helps him to a certain extent is he could be if Gareth decides to play in a back three, he could play as one of your wing backs, so his left wing back, no problem. Because we obviously had problems there when he played Trippier. I was hoping he'd get a little bit of a game in those, a play in that position in those matches. But I think with a player like him, his best form, and I saw a heat map when we did on Sky last week where he plays, playing, and you want to give these players license to go wherever they want. I think if you say to someone that just stay wide left, and you only get a little bit of the ball. And I always feel when you've got players like that can produce magic, that can make that final pass, that can be decisive in a game, let them roam, let them get on the ball. And I think that's what's helped Arsenal. They've been really free in their play. I think if you look at their positioning right now, Players are moving, and that comes with confidence, Peter. When you're not confident, people just stay in their positions because they don't want to take any risks. But this Arsenal side looks like it's one that's full of confidence, full of good form, and they're taking risks, and that's why they're getting the goals. I thought that was a really tough game against Arsenal this week, but they made it look relatively easy. So I think the Arsenal fans and Mikel Arteta will be delighted, and they'll go into this game thinking, what a big one. And all of a sudden for Man United, a few doubts might be creeping in. I still think they've got the quality on the counter-attack to hurt anybody, and that's been their main weapon. So Arsenal defensively are going to have to make sure they're ready for that.